But I'm glad because I'm doing what I really want to be doing, and that's doing web work. So a lot of questions come up for everybody in any particular scenario. If you've got a lot of training, the shortlist document, printing off, it's so cool. If you get a lot of training, say if you get a lot of college, like get a PhD in web development, but you have absolutely no experience. I mean, somebody might not hire you because you're just overly trained, but you have no experience because you need something which is, you've actually improved that you can do what you're talking about. Another extreme would be somebody that has no experience and they have no training. It's like, where do you start? Those are the kind of some of the extremes, and that grid is what we've used for that conversation. So what I was hoping to do is bring in some disparate type of different perspectives from the group. So as I've already described on the Meetup website, Valerie, thank you Valerie for joining us. She's our token representation of the enterprise environment. In other words, big business. Reynolds and Reynolds, anybody heard of them? So do you have a small human resources department or a big human resources?
It's pretty substantial.
How many employees?
I'd say in the Dayton office, there's probably at least 50.
I'm sorry, how many employees at Reynolds and Reynolds?
Oh, okay. About 5,000 worldwide, 1,200 at headquarters in Dayton.
Ben, how many are at Smartphone?
24.
24.
Yeah.
The other is Pomiet. Pomiet, sorry, Pomiet,
Yeah.
which is representing a smaller agency, smaller group. How many are at Pomiet?
We have 20.
20, so a smaller group of people. You're very client focused. So your clients, every contract, every type of project's going to be different depending on what the client needs. Comparing that to an enterprise or a large business, you're constantly in service and you have clients, but they're in a different perspective. Your clients are driving the entire.
Yes.
They're going to bring to the contractor, bring to the service, this is something new that we want to do. Valerie has more of a control over as far as the what the executive direction is going to be going in. Other perspectives, John Greene, with Smart Data Systems, is a recruiter. Technical minded, very, very technical minded. I think you dabbled in jQuery and other things.
Yes.
And somebody would be coming to you that says, I just got fired, or they downsized my office, something like that nature, they'd be looking for a job, right?
Indeed, yeah, we'll go out and find people too. So it's a networking. Most of our employees come through networking, through referrals.
So how long have you been doing that?
About 5 years total.
So you get a bit of experience as far as seeing different types of people, and I'd like to keep the conversation focused on the web industry. So you've seen a lot of people that are working in the web industry, right?
Of course, yeah.
And Anthony, Tony, Ray,
Doesn't matter.
dude.
Dude's fine.
Dude.
All right.
I like your perspective because you are working with people that are coming up, and your job, correct me if I'm wrong, your job is to get these people into a job. Are you training them and then they just go off and they do basket weaving?
Not basket weaving for sure. So, going from in the field, I did design and development, and now teaching, and it's all about getting them in a place where they're going to be comfortable and in a moldable spot once they get the job, because no one's going to be perfect right out of the gate. The job is going to have to mold them a bit.
So you are thinking in that direction. And you can also, can you speak from the perspective of the students?
Yeah, I think the students are, kind of trying to find themselves. At the School of Advertising Art, all the students take web courses, design and development, but certain ones flock more towards photography or graphic design. We also offer web electives where we teach them more advanced stuff. So those particular students, we then push web further and further, and then when those opportunities are available, we kind of point them in those directions.
Great. I should have probably went out and I didn't going to ask you all to do a little bit of the background. So I didn't get too far into that. Bob, thank you for joining us. Bob, you're the owner of the company, right?
Yes,
Russ
sir.
Haddock Associates?
Yes, sir.
And Russ Haddock Associates is a
It's a recruiting firm.
recruiting firm.
Yes.
So you've been doing this for a long time. It's a
Yeah,
family
we've been
business.
in business for 33 years. I've been doing it about 17.
So from the perspective, of the focus of the web industry, which is not necessarily just development, but also anybody that would be doing social media, anybody that would be doing contents as far as doing technical writing, possibly doing up on the web, design, graphics, development, back-end development. Have you seen a lot of traffic, a lot of people over the years like that?
Yeah, definitely see a lot of people like that. So mostly what we're doing obviously is going to find people for jobs. So, but we do work with people too that are looking for jobs. But I would say mostly what we do, we're getting a job working with a company like a Reynolds, or they use outside recruiters. And basically, try to find people and go in and cold call networks and all that.
So what I hope to have gathered for you, the audience, and the members of the Dayton Web Development Group, is a collection of people that you can talk to and you can hear from, you can bounce ideas off of. We've got some canned questions that we're going to be firing off of them, but we can go off of these questions. I'd like this to be a dialogue. This is a place, a safe place where you can ask questions like money. Don't want to talk about that too much at work, but this would be a great time to talk about how much should I be getting paid for what I know and what I've done. Some of the taboo questions, bring them out. This is a great time to do it. I think these guys, these men and women, can learn a lot from you as much as you can learn from them. Because I know that they're always looking for talented people, and I think there's a lot of talented people in this room, and you know a lot of talented people. So, yes.
Just some housekeeping and commercials?
Yes.
Jump right in. So, thanks for coming. I see a lot of new faces. Who's here for the first time? Dayton Web Dev? Awesome, great. Thanks for coming out. So, anyway, just a few kind of housekeeping things. There's Wi-Fi in the blue right there, if you want to get on. Bathrooms are down the hall, down the ramp to the right. There's a little alcove with bathrooms in there. And then just want to talk about our sponsors. We can't do this without them. The two big ones are Sparkbox, company that I work for, right upstairs. For the last year, sponsored all the food and drinks, and of course this space here. So thanks to Sparkbox, my box pen right there. Speaking of, one of the reasons we use this room is for workshops that we call Maker Series. And we bring in kind of people who are kind of leading the web industry here to Dayton so that people can come and hear from them firsthand. And we've had, I think this last year we had 5 or 6 people like Ethan Marcotte, who else we got? Dan Ball, Karen McGrain, Pam Pavlicek, Tim Cadlick, Brad Frost, Kevin Hoffman. And so I don't know if we have the schedule lined up for next year, but keep that in mind. They're all-day workshops, really great quality content too. Also,
Does Ben have any hints yet?
not yet.
Oh, man. I had the honor of going to every single one of these. These are awesome. They're fantastic. So if you can get Connie Vince's into sending you, do it. If that, we can send all our people.
I'm always trying every day to get people to attend those because I think they're awesome.
Yeah.
It's great. What was the other? Oh, Pluralsight. So Pluralsight's also a sponsor. Usually we do giveaways. We won't take the time to this week, but actually they have lots of like 30-day little cards. So if you want to get access to their service, it's like online training type stuff. If anybody is interested, just come talk to me afterwards, and I'll give you one. So it's an offer for tonight. I think that is it. So do you want to work off of our list here?
I should
I'll let you
have
run the show.
You got a hard copy?
Somebody's prepared.
I think, I took your questions and I put them in the other one so that you get some representation.
So let's just, we're trying to record this, so if you want to try to pass around the mic, that'll probably help.
Maybe it would be good for the audience to hear a little bit about yourselves and talk about the company, what you do for the company, and how you guys are servicing the web industry in general.
So my name is Paul Spencer. I co-founded Pomiet, which is the company we have now. What we do is provide teams, so there's a set of developers and human factors engineers in a project manager, and that team is responsible for going and working with, we work in the healthcare industry. They'll go and understand problems within a healthcare provider or hospital. We understand the users, we define workflow, and then we come back to our shop and we design and build a system that sits on their enterprise systems. So that's roughly what we do. My background is software development. Been doing that for a while, 18 years. I also have a master's in human factors engineering from Wright State. The purpose of that is to understand users and to build systems, not just to build systems, but to build systems that are usable and meaningful for people. So that's the whole genesis of the company, Pomiet. My responsibility at Pomiet is to run the teams, the projects, oversee those teams and projects. We run with a lean process, make sure we're following best coding standards, we're following human factors standards, and that we're delivering quality to the customer.
Like I said, I'm John Greene. I work for Smart Data Systems. We develop custom applications pretty much in any industry. We do have some healthcare stuff, but we've kind of focused here lately, really vamping up our mobile web development team. We've developed some internal products that we market really across the healthcare industry, but we're also hitting the legal field at this point. And then we're doing some custom website work for some local clients here as well. Started about 10 years ago by a developer, actually. He had been at Reynolds for some time, and some other companies locally, and decided that he wanted to start his own. So we've been around for about 10 years, founded with a healthcare product called Case Compass, and it's really more of like a case management application. So that's kind of where we've had our roots, and then built from there. My focus in the company right now is building a recruiting practice. When I first came on board about a year ago, we had roughly 25 employees. We actually just finished out the year right around 50 employees. So with bringing me in and really being able to focus on building out the recruiting efforts of the team, things have grown quickly, and we're really headed in the right direction for 2016, it looks like. So it's kind of my focus. I do recruit. I am that guy. But right now I'm really focused on building and how we really are able to attract talent to the organization.
My name is Valerie, and as mentioned, I work at Reynolds. I've been with the company for a little over 3 years now, and I started there actually doing 3D animation for the video team, and then transitioned into the web role. I've been the supervisor of the small web development team for almost a year now. So when I moved into the web role at Reynolds, under the marketing department, it was a one-person team consisting of me. And since then, it's grown quite a bit, and it's continuing to grow pretty substantially. We're always looking for more people because we have a lot of things to work on. So in the marketing department, my team's primarily responsible for the Reynolds corporate web presence across to our customers, which are primarily automotive dealerships. So in addition to corporate websites, we also run campaigns for marketing as well as for the car manufacturers like Ford and GM. If they have partnerships with Reynolds and Reynolds for a certain program that they want to promote, we create web apps for those, and we're starting to branch into doing a bit of mobile app development as well for iOS in particular to support our sales team who use iPads. My background started off in web development. I've been a long time kind of internet geek since I was a kid, and I did a lot of hobbyist and freelance work. I got my associates in web development, and then I transferred to Greene and shifted gears to 3D animation and modeling. So sort of have a dual art and programming, interest. And yeah, I mean, web off and on for a long time, and then full-time professionally for about 3 years. Even though Reynolds is a really big company, my team is only 5, so it has a lot of the small team mentality. We do run an agile process amidst sort of an overarching waterfall architecture. We have a scrum master, a product owner, and things like that. So, might be surprised to find that there's a bit of like a smaller team feel in a big company like Reynolds.
Alrighty. My name is Tony Wardinger. I'm a designer by trade, developer by necessity, and currently an instructor. My background is in design. I went to the School of Advertising Art to become a designer, kind of fell into the development side. My first job in the industry was in this building at a company called Atomic Interactive. And then worked in Columbus for a few years, and then was asked to come back and teach, and that's what I've been doing. My responsibility is to teach them the design process, but also introduce them to this world of development and the basics, and something they didn't even know really was behind a website. So teaching all of them the basics and pushing the ones who really get it and really fall in love with it further, and pushing them into jobs in the industry.
My name is Bob Haddock, and I said it was Haddock and Associates. Russ was my father. He started the business in '82. My background, I came to work with him in '99. Actually, I came in there to start the IT practice. My background is I have a BSEE from Ohio State. I was a former director of engineering at a company up in the Hebrews called NBC, now Beta Laser Mike, and now it's NBC. So I kind of had all sides of the recruiting business. Actually, when I was an engineer, used recruiters to try to find a job. When I was a director of engineering, I had 55 engineers working for me. I used recruiters to staff my department, and I've been doing it the past 17 years. So, right now, we're in growth mode. We've got about 12 people in our firm, and we do have a tech practice, and it includes IT, web developers. We also do engineering, quality engineers, everything that's where they go to tech group that we actually try to place people to get. We're trying to actually motivate people for jobs. And actually, I only saw 2 people here raise their hands that were happy with their job. That's the kind of people we like. The kind of people we like to actually place are the ones that if you didn't raise their hands, that you're actually you might be kind of happy, but you know what? You don't hear about that other opportunity that may be better. So we plan to try to find people who actually want to leverage their career that are interested at least in hearing about opportunities. That's the kind of people we go after.
Thank you. One other bit of housekeeping, which I forgot. Is Catherine? Yeah. I have not met you. Yeah. I just recognize you from the picture. Thank you for bringing your meetup here. So we have guests. We have another meetup which is joining us, which is the Dayton Dynamic Languages Group. Yes. So who's from the Dayton Dynamic Languages Group? Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. So you guys were flexible. We couldn't be here last week because Fox had something else that they needed to do, so we got pushed back a week, and you guys were accommodating. So we appreciate you coming over here. All right, so let's get into some questions. Again, don't be shy. Feel free to engage and ask some questions if you'd like. And I don't know if anybody can see the detail. Do you want to share this? Like put a bit.ly up or something like that, so that everyone can do the.
I'll just try to make it bigger.
Just for the sake of conversation, I did put a little bit of a definition as far as a candidate is a person who is applying for a job. An employer is a person or organization that employs people. An opportunity is a chance for employment or promotion. And this is the grid that I was referring to where you've got the extremes of somebody which is very experienced with no training, somebody which is very experienced and they're well trained or schooled. Somebody with no experience, no training, bottom of the barrel. No experience, or they're well trained. So somebody right out of college, somebody that's got lots of experience and been doing this forever, they might be bored. That's our thing. So, I don't need it because we got it zoomed in. So. All right, so from the candidates type, I'm going to give each of you an option to pass or give comments. I'm going to pass the microphone. But from that candidate listing, that grid, if you quickly describe the challenges each of them, because we're all going to fall into this grouping. What would be the challenges each of those within that group would have as they're looking for a job in the Dayton, Ohio web industry?
So I'll start from the top left, I guess. So the very experienced, and maybe from our perspective, if you go clockwise there, those.
Someone's got a lot of experience. They've been doing a lot of this home stuff. They've been training themselves. But they haven't done it formally.
Yeah, so those three around there, what we would focus on. We wouldn't focus in that bottom left.
So this is
As
something
far as
that,
Pomiet would-
what would you tell that person?
So in that case, they would need to start learning. So for us to bring somebody on to be able to train them is not a business model for us. I know Sparkbox does an apprentice, and I don't know if that fits into that grid or not.
Yeah, probably not, actually. I mean, we expect a certain level of expertise, not a ton,
Yeah.
but we want to.
Yeah, so in that spot, you would be, that's where your motivation kicks in, and you'd have to start moving into one of those.
So, yeah, this
One
is
of
the
those squares.
extreme way out here. Somebody that
Yeah.
just woke up one morning
So you
and said,
need-
hey, I feel like being a web developer.
Yeah.
You know, they'd be way out here.
Yeah, so either coming to some of the workshops that the guys were talking about, or web groups, or and then start taking that knowledge and start getting some experience.
And if you're here tonight and you're in this particular, that's great, because you're in the Dayton web development. This is a great place to start learning some of that information.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and jump right to that one, actually, because that's pretty much me. So as you mentioned, I have some interest in web development as far as learning it myself. I took interest in it because of people like everybody here. I've seen some really cool things that are developed, and so I took interest, and I have that no experience, no training or school right now. So for myself, I've kind of gone through the fact of, okay, my degree's in management, that doesn't teach me anything about what's behind a website. I started learning on my own, so it was more of a going out and finding the resources at that point. I know I'm not going to walk in and get a job even as a junior web developer at this point if I wanted to. And so I've been learning through online resources. Anything I can learn from the people I work with obviously is helpful, but the majority of it has been going out and finding those resources online and coming to these meetups, so it's a great point to make. And I also think even when you're talking about the very experienced and well-trained at school, you're going to run into issues at times simply because there are only a certain number of senior developers that are needed in any given company. So it's a little more tricky, I think, at times with that even.
So I'll speak real briefly to all four of these because I've had a couple thoughts as to like challenges that face each of these types. The upper left there, type 1, which is very experienced but no training, I'd say that a candidate like this probably has a really impressive portfolio or work history they can showcase, but their challenge is going to be getting the resume in front of human eyes, especially with some larger companies and the way that they do screenings and such. They might have awesome work, but they have to, get their foot in the door to see it. But luckily, somebody with a lot of experience probably has a pretty good network, and networking is an excellent way to make that connection.
So
Yes.
if you don't have a degree, is that going to be an instant filter out of the out basket?
I think that depends on the company. It's not for us.
It's not for us either.
We will definitely consider self-taught.
There can be an inferiority complex where it says, I don't have a formal degree, but I can rock this stuff. But they don't show the initiative because they already assume that they can't because it's going to be filtered out because it doesn't say bachelor's degree.
Well, there's a lot of companies that do human resources, this doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't matter, it's not ever get to the manager. Human resources say, nope, that's our policy. You don't have a degree, I don't even want to look at you. So, the degree, I'm looking at this, the degree is about as important as you can get out of any of these quadrants here. So, especially a 4-year degree, even 2-year degrees, people will actually say, nope, don't want to see it.
You said that Reynolds does not filter?
No, Reynolds is a little bit of an anomaly in terms of this, whereas they do have a human actively look at every resume that comes in. That's not the norm, is my understanding with a lot of large companies. They'll have some sort of automated screening that looks for keywords, or that looks for certain types of qualifications before it ever comes to the human. But Reynolds actually has somebody that visually will go through and look at all the resumes that come in.
Okay, I have two different perspectives on this. I have the instructor's perspective where, of course, I think the degree is very important, and I think it adds a certain level of discipline to someone, especially right out of high school, who's still trying to figure out who they are, and they're all over the place, and they're still kind of a kid. And I think at least in SA, we do a 2-year program that's very intense, and we push them to kind of grow up and become a young designer or developer. And I think that's very important. But from my experience as a designer in the industry and being in meetings where we are hiring people or being interviewed for a job, I don't know if they've ever looked at my resume more than just going like, okay, cool, and then looked at my work. I think work is very important, at least in the design industry, for developers and designers. I would say work followed by, and as I don't know if this is callous at all, but like personality. They need to know that they can be able to work with you, get along with you, and enjoy your company. They're going to be with you 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They want to know that they can, become friends with you.
Chemistry is definitely part of it.
Yeah, can I add on to that, actually? I mean, one of the things that's so important to so many people, and a lot of people do a lot of work, but it may not be paid work, but they never share it. And so nobody knows about it. And so doing things like sharing the stuff that you're doing, even if it's, I'm just making a little logo, it's just for fun, put it up online and have a place where people can discover the stuff that you're doing, and that goes a long, long way. So.
Yeah, on that same note, I worked in a more corporate environment when I was in Columbus, and I got to this point as a designer, I was very in the rut. I didn't want to work on the same stuff over and over again, and I ended up doing a for-fun passion project, a year of design stuff. Some of them were awful, some of them were really good. And I ended up getting a call from a company about it, got an interview. I walked into the meeting, my blog was on the TV screen, they talked to me about it, they offered me something, and then I ended up getting a counter offer at my company and getting even more money. So I think passion projects are so important. Showing that you love something, showing that you're not just working it but living it, I think it's very important.
Cool.
I just add on to that, so you should put it on your resume, because I have a lot of people that don't put it on their resume, then I'll interview them in our office and I'll say, hey, you know what, they're telling me about what they have or what they've done, they put it on the resume, put it on the resume, because you want people to know the work you've done. But I will say one thing about if you don't have a degree or even a 2-year degree, you want to go after the small, mid-sized companies. I mean, Reynolds is an anomaly if they're looking at people without degrees. Larger companies, they're usually ones that you got to have a degree. But the smaller to mid-sized companies, a lot of times you can actually get away without even having no degree or a 2-year degree, have some experience.
So I have something to add. So thinking of building on what Tony was talking about. So for us, when you come in an interview, we understand kind of where you are in that grid. But a lot of it is, so understanding the work. So if we're interviewing a developer, there's a code challenge that you have to bring in. We give it to you and you get a week to do it. And that's one of the concepts of the interview. And it's very easy to see what your experience is as a developer when I give you a code challenge and you show it to me. We sit down, you explain it to me, I understand what I'm looking for, and I'm interviewing you to see what your thought process is on all of that. So there's a definite right answer to the problem that we're looking for. So very experienced, well-trained or schooled, who's making $125,000 at some place, often does not pass that test for us. They're in a very, they have a way of doing things, and sometimes those coding practices, development practices aren't what we're looking for. So it doesn't mean that all we're looking for is well-experienced, well-trained or schooled. We're looking for a particular set of people who match our culture and have an attitude of learning and the ability to think about code in a different way.
I've worked in large business like LexisNexis, and I've worked for very small businesses also. I've worked for family companies. And it's definitely the smaller business, if you're looking and you like to wear many different hats. A smaller company, I've worked for Pomiet for 8 years, and I've done everything from minus plunging the toilet. So thinking in that perspective, a smaller company is going to give you the ability to get instant gratification as far as just help somebody. I got that a lot at a smaller company. At LexisNexis, it was, I am a machine, it's part of a bigger machine, which is part of the greater machine. I go in and I don't feel like I've contributed anything. And it's not very satisfactory. Some people enjoy that, some people not. It just depends upon the personality type. I did not like, and I don't want to work for corporate America. I would prefer having a smaller direct impact structure.
Yeah. So I get this question a lot. People ask me, well, I'm new to web development.
It's the T shape, the T point.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Thank you.
All right, great. But this question, I'm new, I want to get into web development, so I'm really interested, but what do I learn? Because do I learn HTML and CSS and JavaScript and Ruby and PHP and Python? And, there's like a gazillion things you can learn. And there's front end dev, there's back end, there's DevOps, there's all kinds of different things you can get into. Should I try to learn as much as I can and get a broad range of knowledge? Should I focus in and I'm just going to focus on JavaScript and only be a JavaScript developer? What's the best career path to take? So thoughts on that, anybody?
There we go. So this kind of builds on what I was talking about before. For us, it's very important to have a thorough understanding of what you're up to. So, and I'm speaking from a web developer standpoint. So you need to understand the technology underneath. You need to understand why HTTP works like HTTP, and you need to understand those concepts. Whether you're doing that in Perl or in PHP or Ruby, I can teach you Ruby or Perl if you're a PHP person and you understand the fundamentals of programming. I can't teach you those things if you are a strong PHP programmer and I'm looking for a PHP programmer, but you don't understand the fundamentals of programming. So for me, it's a deep dive into programming and what it means. And most likely for you, that means picking a language that you enjoy and that you like and that you think leads you somewhere, and using that as a tool to learn how to learn technology and the skill set that you need.
I think he's right. The passion, definitely. It's what you enjoy. Because there are jobs for anyone who wants to do web development in any language, pretty much. True story. We just talked to somebody who I didn't think we had any need for in our organization, but I'm like, hey, he's got a great resume. I'm going to pass it along and just see what people are thinking. And without me even knowing, he's been in for 2 interviews now, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it would have been nice if you guys would have told me we needed him. But it really is more about your passion. They saw what he's been doing. They saw what he's enjoyed. He was able to show projects that he's worked on. And just that alone, they were like, well, we may be able to use this guy. We've got some stuff coming up. So really more about what your passion is and finding the right employer who says, yeah, we could use somebody with your skills and be able to show that you do have that, you're able to back up your passion.
I'll speak a little bit to Alan's previous point regarding, corporate America and, cog and machine. Generally, along with that kind of comes the expectation that you need to be very specialized because you're only going to be doing one little thing over and over and over. But I'll say, at least in my experience at Reynolds, that it's a little bit, it's more of a shade of gray than that. So the way that our IT organization is run versus our software development section versus marketing are completely different. In the marketing department, for one, the kind of the desire for the full stack unicorn, I would say, is alive and well. But with that comes an understanding that a full stack dev is more of a weighted matrix or the T-shaped developer than a superhero ninja that knows everything perfectly and has you can pick up any language and just be excellent at it. So unless you're joining a very large development team at like Amazon or Apple or Google and you're working on a really specialized product, chances are that you're going to need to leverage a lot of different skills during your career. So I definitely ascribe to that notion of deep diving in a few choice skills and then having a general awareness of all of the different skills that are connected to that. And if you're not sure kind of where you should start or what you should specialize in, I would look at products or projects out there on the web that you really like and see what's the tech stack behind that. Are they using Ruby? Are they using PHP for the back end? Maybe they're using a CSS preprocessor. Find the project you like and then figure out what you want to build. And through the process of taking that from conception to deployment, you'll have to, just by virtue of doing the project, kind of gain that understanding and awareness of those other things. So you'll have to learn a little bit about server administration, and you may have to learn about compression and performance and So I think just picking passion projects like was mentioned before, that's really important, and that will help you be that type of developer. And even in a big company like Reynolds, we're looking for somebody that can do a lot of different skills.
And real quick, I just wanted to talk a bit about how I think it depends on what kind of person you are. When I was getting my first job at a school, it was a super small agency, and I was designing a website, writing headline copy, developing the website, putting it in the WordPress, launching it, doing social media. I was doing everything with this website, and I felt like it was mine. Then when I went to a corporate environment and some of those things were taken away from me, I felt like, why do we need all these people? Which, and it's probably not a good thing to say in this room. But you do realize that certain people who specialize in certain facets of the process are going to have more time to really focus on and really dedicate the time to making that facet great, whereas mine would have been, maybe B's all the way around. Having a bunch of people who really focused on the individual aspects of the website can make it an A website.
I would just say, I just don't embellish from my point of view. I just don't embellish your resume. I get a lot of guys and I see all these keywords. I keep hearing keywords. That's a great HR. They love to see keywords, and you can send your resume in HR and they can see all the keywords. But I'm telling you, when I talk to managers, the managers are telling me, I really want a strong PHP developer. Well, make sure that I need this list PHP and you really don't have it, or you did it at home. They're wanting a really strong PHP developer. So when they are actually hiring me to find a person, I'm looking for more focus than what I'm doing usually. I'm wanting well-rounded. Most of my clients want well-rounded web developers, or they're usually asking me for a strong whatever. So I said, don't embellish your resume.
To kind of build on that too, this is technology, and if you're new to it, you don't have to limit yourself to a specific language. I mean, you've got to come into it, learn a language, figure out, hey, this is something that I enjoy. This is one that I really like. Or, you know what? I kind of saw some of this code. I'm not really digging my PHP. Let me go do some of this over here. You're not limited to a specific language. It's easy to say, oh, well, it's better if you learn this one or you learn this one first. Not really. I mean, learn the one that you enjoy or you think you're going to enjoy, and when you find out, yeah, I really do or I really don't, make up your mind at that point. But at least build something and be able to show that you understand programming concepts, as we keep talking about. You got something to show for it, like, hey, I did this with PHP. I'm really wanting to learn this now, that I'm going to add this to my resume. So it's not I don't think there's a great beginning point for where we can just say, generally, yeah, you got to learn Ruby first, or you got to learn Python first. You don't have that limitation. And so I think it's great to dabble with different ones and figure out what really you enjoy.
Yeah, I would also say that, so I guess depending on your experience and where you're at, it can seem like, well, that's a lot of stuff, I'm never going to learn that. But you shouldn't think or expect to learn all of that on your own. So you need to go into the user group. There's tons of user groups in Dayton and Cincinnati. There's tons of people with experience, and you have to find a mentor. So there's no way, I didn't learn everything that I know just by me reading and doing, because you need some validation on what you're doing. You may be doing it right, but you have no idea, and you need people to be able to bounce ideas off of, and a mentor to say, well, that's great, but did you think of this, or you could do it this way, and that's really how you learn. So you need to be able to make sure you're not doing it in isolation.
Fantastic. We got an audience
I just
question.
want to make a comment on that almost, because like at RA, our boss says, we're a small agency, and he'll only keep us on a tech stack every 3 to 6 months, and then we change over. I was just wondering if someone like Reynolds does that compared to another agency like Pomiet, is it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you guys switch tech stacks at all, or because I worked at Honda before I worked at Real Art. And that's part of the reason I left Honda, is because I felt like I wanted to get off .NET after 2 years,
Sure.
So, I mean, you guys kind of switched through tech stacks. I mean, at an enterprise level, I imagine that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, so, here, let me explain next here. With enterprise, web development comes a lot of legacy content that you have to maintain. That's just kind of part of the job. So we have some tech stacks that we maintain that are Windows IIS .NET based. And those are probably going to be there until we do a big churn and actually release a new thing. But my team also, due to kind of being a more nimble, agile team, we have a LAMP stack that we use for WordPress, and then we've got a Linux server with Postgres that we're using with Drupal. So we have a lot of different technologies that we're using kind of all at once. I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast switch. It's more like, we turn our focus to one to kind of do, whatever the largest project is at the time. But we have to kind of keep on the fringe of our memory and understanding of the other tech stacks, because we have to maintain those as well, kind of on an ongoing process. Being a big company, changing tech stacks on an existing application is a slow process. There's a lot of variables and things that have to be weighed, but it's not something that's never done. And the more, just because we built something on a specific tech stack doesn't mean the next project that comes to us will use that same stack. We're going to use whatever tools we think are the best tools to get the job done, even if it involves a learning curve on our end. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't thinking, like, we send code out the door and it never comes back. I wasn't, you guys have to maintain that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cycle.
Does anybody blog? Good. Back me up. I mean, challenge yourself. I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to challenge myself in 2016. Once a month, I'm going to produce a website of some type. And I'm going to challenge myself to make an Ember website or a Ruby website. Where I've got 12 opportunities to challenge myself, document that into a blog. And prospective employers can come to your blog, and it's a snippet of history. Would that prove that I know what I'm talking about if I walked through and documented the steps that I've done? Rather than, it's a long extension of my resume, is it not?
Sort of. I would say it depends on your skill level, I think, on your experience. So if you're in the no experience category, to me that might be a little dangerous, swapping languages and going, because you don't get that deep dive experience and understanding why it's doing what it's doing. I think once you get to a point where I understand why PHP is doing what it's doing, then I would definitely encourage you to swap out and do what you're doing, because going from a dynamic language to a static type language gives you different perspectives. A functional language gives you all different programming experiences, so that when you're in static type, you think, oh, functional programming says I can do this, I'm going to put a closure in here, and you think of those different ideas. But doing that kind of all at once without understanding those things, you may not be able to grasp those across.
Well, my point was that to document it in a blog helps to prove that you know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
that you have the passion for it, I guess. There you go.
Yeah. The next question that I put on here is this perceived persistence of .NET jobs are always available. But what if I want an Ember job? Or what if I want to be exclusively front end? Or if I just want to be a JavaScript developer? In Dayton, Ohio, are there jobs out there that I can be just an Ember developer? Or is it, if I want to get a job, I got to know .NET, and that's a guaranteed job? Do you get the same impression? Are there all the job boards and all the opportunities? .NET, you're hired. Ember, I don't think so.
That's what I see a lot. So, .NET, you're hired. So quite frankly, most of the jobs I do get are a lot .NET. So, and that's our hardest find.
Why is that?
Why is that? Just a shortage. I mean, I would say it's just a shortage of people that are, true object-oriented languages. So, again, to me, it's like if you are, a lot of people we see say they know it, but then they go in there to do a whiteboard exercise and they bomb it. So, and also this goes back to where I talk about schooling and the background of that too. So, and that's a lot what I see is that a lot of people say they're good at it, and they're not. I mean, I hear a lot about that. So, for us, I'm technical, but I'm not a C# or a .NET developer. They're telling me they're good. They tell me they do all this, but then when they go up in front of the, in front of a manager or tech people, they're not able to do it. So a lot of times, we just see a lot of ones that are very, very good. it's hard to say that a lot of people do it, just not really strong.
Do you think Dayton can support or can grow and start adopting some of these other newer framework technologies?
I just haven't seen it from the companies I work with. I just have not seen it.
It's more of the Microsoft entrenchment.
So. Yes.
I think it's the corporate. So, talking about Reynolds and Reynolds, where Valerie's talking, they're a little more agnostic. But I mean, when you get into an enterprise, you have to support hundreds of people, maybe even thousands. And so their intention is to say, we're .NET stack. We're not going to be Ruby and PHP, and then now it's going to be hard to find people that fit into these places because we need to be able to fund the machine, right? Build the machine. So that's just a side effect of very large companies. And for us, we're technology agnostic, so we work. We've done Meteor projects in Ruby and .NET and Java, but those we're working with corporations, large corporations. So it's up to us to kind of go to them and sell why this technology fits their problem. And most of the time we can do that. Otherwise, you end up either a Java or a .NET. I mean, that's pretty much what they are. They're Java or .NET. Most corporations.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of add to that too, I think for Dayton, it's a little more important to be flexible. You said, you did .NET for a few years, right? And then you're like, I don't want to do .NET. I hired a .NET developer who's now working on our web team, working in Node. So it's one of those that's like, the flexibility is important, I think, more in this market, maybe than another market. You were asking about Dayton specifically. In Cincinnati, it may be a little different. Columbus, it's going to be very different. It just depends on where you're at. But Dayton, it's a little more important, I think, to be flexible with what you're willing to do. Just as long as you know, like when you're going in for an interview or something like that, hey, what are my limitations as a developer? Am I stuck with just .NET? Is this what my day in, day out is? Or am I going to get the opportunity to work maybe with some of the other technologies that I enjoy? So it's probably a little more important in Dayton to be flexible.
I definitely agree with that. I will say, as far as .NET goes, although in marketing we're a lot more flexible, we can do a lot of cool things, and we have a lot of free reign to use newest technology like Node and PHP, just whatever we feel meets the need of the project. Our software development team and a lot of the kind of corporate systems that run the company, like our intranet and a lot of those things, those are all .NET. And I think that's fairly entrenched. So if you were hired at Reynolds as a software developer, you would probably be doing .NET. So again, there could be opportunities in large companies, but I think, at least in Dayton, it's definitely not, it's got an emerging startup culture, but it's not quite as much as some of the other towns. And where you see a lot of that technology agnostic type of culture is in startups. But it can exist in kind of little niches within a larger company, but it's a little bit difficult to know, from just seeking a job if it's going to be that. That's why I think it's really important, if you do have an interview with a company that's larger, or any company really, just try to really suss out what their culture is and how flexible they are to change and keeping up with trends and things like that, so that if another awesome JavaScript framework comes out 2 months from now, is the team going to be open to looking at that if it meets the need of the project? But I don't think it's hopeless for Dayton to have other types of job postings besides .NET. But they might be a little bit harder to find. But I have seen, at least since I've been in the industry, that there's been a positive trend in terms of being more open. I think big companies change slowly, but they do change. So as .NET begins to become less of the golden child and more of like the antiquated, language that nobody really wants to play with quite so much anymore, companies will adapt, even big ones.
You made a comment to me about, might not have those comments about.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on this question.
But from a designer, do you see an entrenchment in a specific tool set for design?
That's a complicated question. I would say that as designers, certain designers are they get very in a rut of they only design in Illustrator, they only design in Photoshop, or they don't want to learn anything about development, and therefore it makes it harder for them to communicate with the developer. And I personally feel like it's important to be very well-rounded in all of that stuff. So, you know, I would say half of our students are never going to do web stuff again, or never going to develop a website again, but they have the language, so even if they design a website, they can work with the developer, and they're not completely lost in the conversation. They can talk to them and say, you know, move the H1, and not just say, move the text on the top. And there's still a common language between the two aspects of the website.
I would say, so .NET and Java are not dirty words. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it just depends on where you're at, right? So if you feel like you're still young and you're still trying to figure out what you're up to, and you're in that no experience, well trained, and that may be home trained on my own. Learning .NET at a corporate job is a perfect place to go and learn what it is to build software. And .NET or Java or whatever it is a great place. And then you can get to a point where I understand how that works. I understand programming, and then now I can start thinking about what does it mean to go somewhere else, doing more of these, I'll call eccentric fringe frameworks for languages.
I was going to say .NET's not like, I mean, Core just came out like a couple months back. So I mean, it's not like, I know I'm not putting it down at all or anything. And with the Java stack, they've got Clojure and Scale that are out there.
But there's also
leading new stuff.
You could be on a project. I was just on a project where it was a back-end .NET development C# with a front-end Angular JS. And I was like, yes, Angular JS, come on.
Yeah.
So when the boss said, I'm going to throw you on a .NET project, I'm like, but you're doing the front-end side. I'm like, yay.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so since we're talking about Dayton, I wanted to ask the question, one of the questions that I get a lot is for remote work. And, you know, what do I have to do that's really appealing to me, and, you know, what do I have to do to kind of get in that position? You know, what kind of people hire people remotely? And so just that question to all of you, you know, is whether recruiters or is it for your companies, you know, do you hire people remotely? And if so, what do those people look like, and if not, why not?
From my experience, I've never actually worked remotely myself, but I have plenty of friends, designers, and developers who do. And generally, it's smaller businesses. Generally, it's businesses who really need people, really need talented people, but they don't want to make them travel the distance. And I think if you're looking for that, you probably should aim towards these smaller companies. I do have a friend who is one of the lead developers at Abercrombie, who lives in Centerville and drives up 3 days a week, but works remotely 2 days a week. So I think it's a compromise you have to make. It's possible to do it in a larger environment. You're just going to have the skills to back that up. Personally, I can't work remotely. I need to be in a place that's like, it's work time now. If I'm home, I'll just watch the cartoons all day.
So that's the admission of lack of discipline.
That's just on the internet.
So prior to joining Reynolds, I worked remotely for about 3 years or so, both as a freelancer and as a subcontractor for multiple different companies. So I've kind of been on both sides of it. I will, for the most part, agree that generally remote options are offered in smaller to mid-sized companies. There are large companies that offer it as sort of like a culture perk to try to attract top-tier talent. We have remote positions in field sales, but we don't have remote positions in web development at Reynolds. Reasoning behind that is primarily due to just interaction with the team and workflow. So we don't have the processes or the communication tools in place to make remote work really effective if we have a remote team member. My team, again, which is a small team, we're probably a dozen times a day kind of huddled around somebody's computer, pouring through code or pair programming or just doing things kind of very rapidly back and forth together. And traditionally in the past, and you may find with other big companies as well, they have a bit of a slowness to adapt some of the newer project management communication tools that are out there like Slack and chat and some of those other things. So because we don't have those things in place, you know, we're not offering a remote environment. But typically, in my experience working from both sides, I will say that having somebody that I can physically bounce ideas off of when I'm trying to solve a really hard programming problem and not, you know, having to do that communication remotely helps my development quite a bit. So.
For us, we don't really have specific remote positions. We do have people that work remote. We have remote capabilities. We can pretty much do whatever we need to from home, a lot of us do at times. But working in the environment we work in, a lot of times the developer is working in pairs, pair programming. And so they're not really, it's kind of hard to work as a pair when you're not here. So, you know, it's one of those, it just kind of depends on the situation and what we're actually working on at the time, I think, more than for us.
Yeah, so for us, so we hire culture fit first, and then second, whether you fit into our experience mold.
So if you're the coolest guy on the planet, you can get a job. There's nothing or nothing.
As long as you're cool within Pomiet. So there's a culture aspect. We're looking for a specific type of person who is willing to learn, take on new ideas, go home and eat, breathe it. Those kinds of people are who we're looking for. So we have a whole model around that. So if that means you're remote, then you're remote. So we have a guy that's in St. Louis. We have a few people in Kentucky. We have a guy in Virginia. And we were contracting with a guy in Columbus. So for us to do pair programming, we use a tool called TMUX, which is it's just basically a terminal. And while I'm typing, you can see exactly what I'm typing, and then you can even take over the screen and start typing. And then we use a VoIP, basically a game software called TeamSpeak, and then everybody just has their headsets, and you're in a chat room. And it's almost like we're all sitting in the same room. So that's what we use as tools-wise.
I think it was John from your team that came and spoke in January.
Oh yeah.
And he shared with us
The cool stuff, yeah.
the cool stuff.
Yes.
Oh, I don't need the mic.
The mic for two?
Okay. Just to kind of spring on board on those comments about culture fit and address the second bullet, the first question there, what is more valuable in the market? The range of experience, and the research actually shows, contrary to what has been vocalized, and that most people say they make a hiring decision on is on experience, and it actually isn't. That as humans, we make decisions from our midbrain, and that's always done from an emotional connection. That confidence and potential are a stronger indication of success, and it's also the number one reason why people hire. They may even say, I don't know why I'm hiring you. You don't have experience in X, Y, Z. And from my own professional experience as hiring manager of over 40 years, I've chosen candidates that had a passion and potential over experience.
Yes, that's right.
So charisma makes a big percentage.
Charisma, but it's part of that interaction.
Well, it's not charisma, it's making a connection.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
I just want to load balance.
So on the culture note, I think, you know, it's working remotely seems like a fun thing to do, and it is nice, and it's nice to avoid the travel, but creating a family of coworkers and really forming that bond, not only will help, I think, that company and grow those projects to be better, but I also think the number one advice I give to all my students is making good connections with people. Like 99% of the opportunities I have had is because someone has recommended me, or someone's remembered me, or someone's, you know, hey, you should call Tony, and then I meet with them, and I get another job, or I get called back to be a teacher. I think you can't really form those bonds if you're not there to form those bonds. So I think doing that is fun in the short term, but maybe loses some long-term benefits.
So there was historically, like 15 years ago, there was a guy that was in the corner in the basement of the building, something like that. He was hacking on code. That guy doesn't fly anymore. You got to be more social, engaging with your team.
Yeah.
We are an hour in, and we could go. There's plenty more questions, but I want to open up and pose a thought to the audience. Dayton, Ohio. I mean, think about how could we can increase the number of design opportunities, or increase the number of development opportunities, increase the number of contents creation. What barriers are there? Like, there's just no companies that need those type of services? I don't think so. They do. Could they be outsourcing that? I'm passionate about Dayton, Ohio, because I lived here all of my life, and I want to see this place be competitive with Cincinnati and Columbus. I want this to be a vibrant area where people will consider Dayton, Ohio as a place to do their work. So, from your positions, what are the challenges of finding that job? The company's too big, I can't get a hold of the decision maker. The vetting process through the human resources department is impossible. I have no motivation, so I need somebody to kick me in the rear. What's going to make a difference?
I think one of the factors that play to somebody getting hired is that the job description makes sense. As a web designer myself, I identified myself with Tony there. I had to do some dev work because I had to do it. So I became proficient at it. What happens is that, but I'm first and foremost a designer. So I've seen job posts out there that say UI UX designer. I don't see web designer rarely anymore. For me, they're just the same thing, just words change a little bit. And then on the nice to haves, there's AngularJS, there's JavaScript, where the requirements list say typography, color, theory, layout, CSS, HTML. So when you see the nice to haves, even some of those nice to haves are on the requirements, and then the title says UI UX designer. So I'm like, okay, so do I try to contact these guys? And now I just ditch. After some times that I've tried it, it's just a waste of time. So that to me tells me that they just don't really know what they're looking for. So that's the thing. The job description needs to say it right.
So why are there postings for 32 different skill sets for one position? Is that what I'm hearing? Why are these postings out there which are not saying, we need a designer with designing skills? You're seeing jobs that are saying, I need a designer, a plumber, a banker, and a pediatrician that can do this job.
Right, so that kind of clashes with what you guys are saying, going specific into a certain technology. That's not what I've seen really for the past 5 years.
Please be quiet. I'm balancing the microphone.
I get my perspective on that. Obviously, job descriptions to me, yes, they are written by sometimes hiring managers, but a lot of times HR. And depends on the size of the company, they do a lot of resume collecting. So they'll put all the stuff on a resume, and basically they do want to do resume collecting. They want to build their database. So yes, they need to have a job. I can say they don't have a job, but I'm telling you they're building their database. So, and what I tell people over here too is basically what you want to do, you talk to the hiring manager. I mean, I can say go through a recruiter, but you got like Reynolds and Reynolds who doesn't use recruiters, outside recruiters. Forget about going through HR and through a web posting. Find the manager, call them up. I was a former director of engineering. Somebody did the research on me, my company, what we did, and they called up and actually talked to me. I'd actually been so impressed, and that we talked about the connection. I'd have had an instant connection like that. Wow. So when you see job postings out there, don't always take them for a grain of salt. I mean, I hate sending job posts or job descriptions out, even if they're from a manager. I just had a recent job like that, and the guy read all the stuff he wanted, and said, I can't even find that person, so let me look at it, because I don't have this, this, and this. So that's an idealistic person you'll never find. So I know people can be afraid getting on the phone for, talking to a manager, but I'm telling you, if you can try to find a manager, you can find managers. You should go on LinkedIn. You know, go on LinkedIn, look at his background, look where he graduated from. I'm Ohio State grad. Man, I would, you know, call me, you graduated from Ohio State, let's talk about that. I'm just telling you, I'm gonna start talking to you, I'm gonna have that connection. So that's what you wanna do. Don't always look at that, at the job descriptions, that's what they want. Don't just submit your resume through a posting. You know, because I'm going, moving on here, but I'm telling you, use other resources besides just submitting your resume through a posting.
There's a real world experience in the room.
So, yeah, other questions, just any question. I think we got 15 minutes left or so. And
Can I call you out?
Yes.
At the CodePen meeting, Tyler, you talked to Beth, the reporter there, and there was an opportunity, and it was a social engagement, and it was just kind of happened, right? So if you went through the formal processes, and there's a posting out there on Indeed, and you post your resume out there, you're going to sit and wait forever for that thought possibly to come back, because you're going through the formal gatekeeping processes. So that's a real world example where he talked to somebody that could make an influence and get it into the hiring manager's hands, or around some of the, navigate some of that. Yes, sir.
That's similar to my experience too. Truth be told, I got my current job by drinking coffee on Fridays with the design and development team.
It was coffee.
Yeah, it was coffee. It's morning time, man.
It's coffee.
Yes, it was coffee. Trust me. It was coffee. But yeah, now, so I got the job then, and like I said, it was just going to Code and Coffee time and time again, knowing the team, and the company itself owns the entire building, so not only did I know them through the design and development team, but I knew other people that were also iOS developers, Android developers, and that's not my cup of tea on web specifically. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing on just going, the simple act of like, hey, I want to meet new people. I want to hear what other people have to say about, coffee for one thing. I mean, God, the first meeting I was like, yeah, I actually learned something about coffee. I wasn't actually planning on doing that. I was just planning on drinking coffee and meeting new people. And then 4 months later, I got a new job.
You were out of work for how long?
2 weeks.
You were out of work for 2 weeks. You only had to have, it was like 6 months.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks.
Okay.
So,
Other questions?
can I ask a question?
You're going to ask a question to the panel? You got to come out here.
Well, I was going to ask a question to you guys, actually. So,
To the audience, we're going to ask the audience.
well, specifically to Smartbox. So, okay, so we've got the kind of the corporate with Valerie, she had somebody who had a connection. Where does the resume go when it comes to Smartbox? If I apply directly to
I'm
it?
not Smartbox, so I'll have to get Smartbox.
We have a pretty informal process. You fill out a very simple form. It's literally a Google form, so it goes into a Google spreadsheet. And then we have a little notification that pops up in a channel in Slack where our folks who kind of do most of the interviewing are watching what's going on. And if we happen to be looking for something that you have, the questions are pretty. They're more interpersonal than they are technical, because similar to what you were saying, Paul, we hire a lot around culture. But yeah, we're always looking for that kind of thing, but we're just kind of paying attention to that, and we'll get a couple of those. There's a pretty regular stream of that kind of thing coming in, so we try to keep that document live, and then if we have an opportunity to interview somebody, if we're looking for something that they may offer, we set up an interview and we decide to pass, we'll shift them out of that spreadsheet. So we basically have a long running list of people who have applied and kind of search through that as needed.
So no HR is my point.
Yeah.
Right, so the smaller organizations, you don't really have to go through the filters, same filters, so look at who you know, or apply directly, because it's not going to go through that HR system that's saying, oh, this person doesn't have JavaScript when they're trying to be a designer. So it really depends on the company. So pay attention to the organization you're applying to. I think is critical for that. I've gotten lost in Reynolds before in the past, I'll be honest, myself. So
It's a big place.
It is. And there's a big difference. So the size of the company matters too.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, obviously with Reynolds, we have an HR department, so myself as a hiring manager, I don't see every resume that gets submitted for a position that I've written. It goes through HR first and then it comes to me. That being said, it does go through, a physical person at HR, not a crazy machine that, just spits out a bunch of keyword matches. What happens at Reynolds is if the HR manager and the specific recruiter that I'm assigned as the technical recruiter, if they think that it looks like it's a good match for my open position, they bring that person in and they do some assessment testing, and from that point then I'm contacted. Now, I will stress very much the importance again of the connection and networking because like Alan mentioned, if I meet you at an event like, here or CodePen and, we talk a little bit and you're looking for a job and you email me your resume or, somebody within Reynolds, it's incredibly, it's very useful for me to get to look at that first and then I can fast track it through the HR and say, I really want to interview this person, can you make it happen? So that is very helpful and I appreciate that. It also gives me more time to kind of look at the qualifications and the background of, the person that's interested. But ultimately, just to echo what I think everybody said, I hire for fit and for culture. There could be somebody that checks off every little dot in my little internal idea of this is the perfect person for this position, but if I don't get a feeling that they can work good with my team or that they're going to fit well within the company, I'll pass on them. On the flip side, if there's somebody that just really seems like they're going to gel well and has a great attitude, a great passion, and can demonstrate that they're willing to learn, because let's be honest, in the web, if you can't learn, you're probably not going to survive because it changes a lot. If they can demonstrate that and they don't have every little bullet point on that job description, which is an ideal situation, I would rather hire that person by far.
Can you feel when somebody's keyword baiting their resume?
Yes.
Yeah, when I speak to them.
Piggybacking on what you said, Valerie, as somebody that looks for a company to work with, I don't like to use the term work for because it's my decision to work with the company. As a person that looks for a company to work with, when you guys say jive with the culture and all that, that's great. But there's a downside for us that are looking for the company, and that is that we have an hour or less to really know each other. So we are at a major disadvantage because 45 minutes, an hour, whatever, is just not enough time to know somebody, let alone make a decision of I want that person or not. So that's I don't know if you guys have ever thought of that. I've always thought that interviews should be throughout an entire week. I'm just saying, right? Come for half a day. I'm just kind of throwing out ideas in case I eventually end up having to hire somebody. The 1 hour thing is just doesn't work. Come for the whole week, we'll pay you, right? Half a day each day. Let's plan a series of projects or one project. Let's see how we feel with each other. That's all. You get paid for your time. We respect that, and you get to feel us. We get to feel you. That is a more equally.
So that hiring process that you're describing is a viewfinder into the culture of the company. So, if you're only getting 35 minutes in an interview, you can understand just by that interaction what their culture is. So you're right. You are interviewing the company as well, and so you can even ask for some of those things if you want. I wouldn't say that there's anything outside the bounds that says, do you mind if I sit with the team, or if I meet with so-and-so, or spend an hour here, or do that. That by posing those questions, and they say absolutely not, right? You're getting a view into their culture.
So you would encourage somebody to just pop into the office and say, hey, can I sit down with your developers?
I think it depends. So I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. If I am somebody who is unsure of where I fit and I'm still learning, I'm going to be willing to go ahead and take a spot so that I can learn. And it may not be the right place culturally, but at least it's an opportunity for me to understand the industry, understand what business A works, and I don't like that. If it's somebody who has a lot of experience and I've kind of gone through that, yeah, I think it's totally acceptable for me to go over and say, do you mind if I sit with your team? I want to meet your people. I'm going to get an understanding of what their culture is.
I'm gonna swing by it.
Actually, I did something similar a while back, where I actually told the hiring manager, okay, and this is kind of an advice I give to others. I told him, all right, let's stop the formal interview. Do you have right now an issue that your team is facing that you want my feedback on? He said, yeah, hold on a second. So he was not prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
So he got a bunch of papers with some wireframes of some mobile, something they were doing, and we started talking about it. Oh yeah, okay, slide up, all this stuff. So not because of that, and I will never know, I eventually ended up working there. But I did try to break that mold, so to show that I'm really ready to rock and roll there. So
What I would say is that, because obviously we deal with a lot of candidates in my interviews, is basically if it is more than an hour. The problem we have, one of the top, couple of problems we have with candidates, they don't take more than an hour. It's not the interview itself. They don't take more than an hour to prepare for the interview. We give a lot of preparation. I can't tell you, if you read the interview tips we give, you would laugh at them and say, no, but they really do that? And they have no idea. They can bring questions on a notepad. They should have Googled it. Tell me, just don't look at the website, Google them. I told you they should go on LinkedIn, look at the managers, the people they're interviewing with. I mean, if you do all that, that's going to take you more than an hour. So I'm telling you that having that connection that we just heard here, if you do all that preparation, it's not, we have application forms you got to fill out. I can't tell you how many candidates, I'm not filling it out. So what, you're not going to take time? It takes time to find a job. So, and it's not just going to the interview, sitting there for an hour and basically getting the job. And that does happen. But sometimes you got to take the time to do the preparation ahead of time, and then you'll be able to get that connection quicker. Now, I don't know your personal, what happened personally with you, but I'm telling you, what I see with candidates is, and I'll get a candidate involved in an interview, and I'll ask them, didn't you go through all the interview tips I did? Didn't you go through, researching the company? Well, I didn't have time to do that. So I agree with you, it's more than an hour, but a lot of candidates just don't take more than an hour.
right.
What other questions? Where else can we explore? That topic, I've heard come up, actually, it was on Shop Talk Show. They were talking about, they actually hired somebody, Shop Talk Show?
Podcast.
The podcast, they were talking about, they actually hired somebody as part of an interview process to say, we have a specific project. We're going to hire you just to do this one little project, and that was kind of their interview. So, yeah, don't hire somebody, but hire somebody to do a specific project, that will be a get to know each other thing.
I think to follow on with that, a lot of times you hear suggestions for work on open source projects. So I was wondering if any of your companies open source any of your work, and how valuable that is to you.
Open source work versus, guidance. But you work in Drupal, which is open source.
Yes, so we use a lot of open source technology. That's a relatively new development for Reynolds as a whole. Generally, or historically, I guess I'll say, the company ascribes to the theory of kind of keep everything in-house, build your own system. But at least on my team, with the multiple projects and deadlines pulling us in all directions, we're looking at, has somebody already invented a really awesome way to do this, so we don't have to potentially reinvent the wheel, or we can just hook in, use an API to do some custom stuff. So we use open source things a lot of times, frameworks, CMS, whatnot. We don't currently open source any of our own code, but I'm not against doing that. We've rolled our own grid system that we think is pretty awesome and does some things that the others, are lacking in. And I'd be perfectly fine if, the developer responsible for that wanted to throw it up on GitHub. I have no issue with that, and I'd support it.
How many of y'all actually go to GitHub and look at what somebody's been done?
That's what I was about to follow up with. So when I'm looking for somebody that is interested in a job, one of the first things I do is try to see if they've contributed to open source or if they have a GitHub, because that shows me that they're very active in the community, or at least they have an interest in collaborating with others and making an impact on something. So that's definitely a key that I look for when I'm reviewing candidates.
Would that even be allowed though? I mean, just working at Reynolds, if he wanted to open source any software he had even written at a corporate level, that wouldn't be okay, I would imagine.
I would say in software development wing of our organization, no, but in the web organization, we're not writing anything that's under intellectual property. So it's a little bit different. Definitely in software development, we would be able to open source because that's, a product that we're selling to our customers.
Right.
Is the automotive dealership solution. So none of that code could be open source because that's our business. But if we're writing, a cool grid that launches marketing websites, and the only thing that grid is responsible for is responsive layout and dealing, with some SaaS architecture that only touches promotional web, I wouldn't see why there would be an issue with it. Again, that's just my opinion. Obviously, everything would have to go through an approval process at a corporate level.
Two questions.
Yeah.
I think maybe 5 more minutes or so.
Somebody asked about salaries. So I guess mine is probably more of a statement. I've been lucky enough to be in the web industry now for almost 2 decades. I got into super young. Our industry as a whole is super young, right? Like 25 years into this. We are nowhere near mature. Our best practices are just the things we did last time, right? Like there truly is no best practices yet. It's like 25 years. Us as the employees, or as the small business owners, hold all the power, right? Every company that we have, they have a recruiter that's out to get us right now, right? The web industry is a lot different than the legacy software industry, right? Where you had to program in .NET, or you had to program in Java. If you want to code in Ember, or you want to design a sketch, and there's not a job out there that is doing that, create it, right? Why is Sparkbox here, right? Because Ben didn't work for anybody else anymore, and one worked for himself, right? I've had the privilege in the past to work for companies that were started out of a dorm room. My buddy Adam right next to me works for that company right now. Started in a dorm room, 75 people, right? And they did that because their philosophy, their culture, their beliefs didn't match with the company, right, that was out there. So we've talked about largely one way of, do you match with the company? Well, what I want to say is, worry about what your value system is, and does that match the company you're going to interview for, right? So if I have to go through and do 3 interviews, my resume goes through a keyword process, honestly, screw that company, I don't want to work for it, right? And I hold that power because there's not a lot of us that have up-to-date knowledge and are attending all the meetups, going to the conferences, and really give a damn at the end of the day about what we do. So I would say, don't compromise your integrity, your belief system, and don't work on something you don't want to work on, right? Once you have a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of training, you own your future. It's up to you to do something with it. Yeah, we're just calling the attention to the microphone. This is our friends from the Columbus web group and the Drupal, PHP and the Columbus web group. Thank you guys for, yes.
Sorry. So we were talking about open source, and I'm wondering, as a hiring manager myself, if I see a candidate who's contributed a lot on GitHub, I tend to see that as bonus points, but I won't necessarily, take points away, if you will, if they don't have that. And I'm wondering if that makes me kind of weird. I'm wondering, I'm in a situation where as hiring manager, I got a really cool team that I really like at LexisNexis, which sounds weird. We're in this small little team that we own the crap out of our product, and we make a huge difference for our product. But I love that job, but I also feel like I'm open to other things. Certainly, and particularly because LexisNexis, I feel like, is not this exciting thing on a resume. But I have this concern that maybe other hiring managers, if they don't see you on GitHub, is that a black mark? You know, I have a passion for this industry. I'm sure most of the people here do. I don't do a lot of that contributing, and I have this worry that it sends the wrong message, whereas I spend a ton of time on my own private time researching new things because our product at work is evolving so much and we're constantly doing new things. There's always something to learn that I can do at work, and it is exciting. It's not like I hate my day job and so I want to go home and do something cool finally. Is that a problem with people that you're interviewing? If you don't see that, is that an issue, or will you bring that person in and it's bonus points if they have that?
So that extracurricular passion, is that something that you key off? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and if you don't have that visible on a GitHub, how can you showcase that in a resume so you get far enough to show your passion?
So I'll say it's definitely, if somebody doesn't have a GitHub account or a CodePen or something like that, it's not automatically a black mark. I don't want to ever talk to them. What I'm looking for with something like that is that they have a pulse on the industry in some fashion. That, you know, one way that shows that somebody is interested is by contributing to open source on GitHub, or if they're writing blogs on CodePen, or you know, it depends on the personality type, I think, of the developer. And there's this term out there, black box developers. You know, a developer might be really good at what they do, but they work in kind of like isolation, and on the internet they may not have much of a presence. As long as when I, you know, sit down and interview somebody like that, may not have a lot of social presence in the industry online, if they can tell me, you know, oh, I just read this awesome article on a list apart and they talk about these concepts, or, you know, I attended a webinar last week and, you know, I heard Tim Catlett talk about performance. Like, if they're showing me that, you know, they understand what's going on in the industry, they understand, they're keeping up with things, they're a voracious learner. You know, there might be just a personality style that maybe they don't want to put themselves out there online. I personally am actually that way myself. I do a ton of reading, a lot of, you know, webinar conference attendance, but I don't have a blog, and I don't have a very prolific presence outside. So that's, at least for me, not an automatic mark. You know, it's cool to see that because it shows me, you know, they're pretty extrovertedly passionate about the web, but I think you can also be introvertedly passionate about it and do your own thing. If I, you know, interview somebody like that and they can demonstrate it, then it's good with me.
So I've written down LinkedIn, GitHub, CodePen, Dribble, personal blog. What else would be a place for an employer to go see how cool a person is?
Behance.
I'm sorry?
Behance.
Behance. Okay. Anything else, Bob? Is there a specific place that you would go to, or do you think LinkedIn is one of the big?
LinkedIn is mostly what I go to, yes.
Just to kind of springboard on the Behance tip, and to reference our friends from Columbus, a little history on that company. It started by going to the community that they wanted to serve and asked one question: what is your biggest pain point? And they solved that. Then they went back to get the next pain point. If you're not asking what the pain point of the organization that you want to serve has, you're not going to have very good success at making that connection. So make sure that comes up in your dialogues and interviews, is what's the pain points and how you can provide value and solve them.
Ben, do you have any suggestions as far as places to show off your work?
I mean, Twitter.
Twitter. Right on Twitter. Facebook.
I'd say that Instagram, a lot of like the designers that are big in the industry have Instagram, they're posting work in progress and their final stuff, and they'll also post on Dribble, but I think it's a different type of community you can reach who aren't necessarily honed into the design industry, but they might still have a need on design house.
Big bug out here too, which is another.
We've hired a couple folks who have built something and sent us a URL, and it was, you know, built with basically saying, hey, would you hire me? Here's the kind of cool things I can do, you know, and they build something that is just built for us, you know, like a custom little side project. So that's been something that's caught our attention because it's pretty unique, you know.
That's a pretty cool way of doing a job.
Yeah.
I know what your pain is, and I've solved it for you. Here you go, Art. Okay.
A question, all of them, but particularly to Valerie, is in the past, something I've done is create a CD with my sample code, you know, HTML pages, documents that I've written, my resume, et cetera, certificates. And then I give that to the hiring manager, and I think it's helped me. But I'm wondering, do you see that often, and do you think that's a good thing to do?
So I've never had somebody give me, you know, a physical copy of web work or code samples. I would be opposed to it, certainly. The first thing I ask our recruiting team once they've referred somebody to me is for work samples, because I want time to kind of pour over their code and see how they think, you know, how do they format their code, you know, do they comment or is it like spaghetti? So, you know, I definitely look for that, the format that it comes to me in, whether it's through a CD or online. For web work, I prefer to see it online just because, especially if they're using back-end technology, so I can actually, you know, use the thing and see the functionality and how it's working. I know it's not always possible to showcase all your web work online because maybe you did an awesome project and then the client, you know, pulled it off. In that case, I would always recommend just take really thorough documentation and you know, maybe approach them later on and say, hey, am I allowed to spin off, you know, a kind of canned version of this for my portfolio? Would that be acceptable? Don't be afraid to ask those questions. I did that with some of my contractors I worked with for art projects. You know, I contributed artwork to an e-learning company that was doing, you know, modules, and then after the fact that the project was over, they didn't have it up anymore, so I asked them if I could throw it up on my own site. They were fine with that. I will not ever hire somebody for web development without seeing their work, so we have had some people come in that didn't have a portfolio, and unfortunately, you know, there's a rare case if somebody doesn't have any work that they can show, and I feel like they're a really good fit. In the past, I have invited them in to spend a half day at the company and do a code test. So, you know, that if I have a good feeling about the person and they may not have the work, we'll do that. But even yeah, I would say if somebody came into an interview and handed me a CD, I'd appreciate that as kind of a follow-up, but I'd probably look at the work before the interview as well.
I would say you want to, you know, enhance that is that bring your performance, especially if it's good. So again, I'm a former manager, director of engineering too. Anyone, and actually when I was finding a job as an electrical engineer, when I went to find a job, I kept that with me all the time. And there's nothing more powerful than to say, well, if you're talking about yourself, how good you are, well, if you're about talking about yourself, I just gave you a performance review. And I tell you right there, you know, if you got a good review in your supervisor, that's very powerful.
And just real quick on the showing people your work, I think it's important to, in the days leading up to the interview, to plan a narrative, know what the company is and know what they're looking for, and don't show them a bunch of stuff that doesn't relate to them at all. I would, you know, always build a sub part of my website that just is showing work that they're going to be interested in, that we're going to pull up to a meeting and we're going to go through it. And I mean, an interview is like a first date, really. You're selling yourself, and you're selling this idealized version of yourself, and you're going through the story. And you don't need to show 10 different web apps. You can show 3 web apps, 3 e-commerce. You just show them you can handle everything. If they want to see more, you can send more.
So we are constrained for time. You want to do any closing wrap up or?
Yeah. Just
Run the show. I'm going to give it over to you.
Closing comments. So I mean, the 3 big things I heard today was, hey, build stuff, get some experience, share what you're building publicly, not just with your friends, but throw it on the internet, and then make personal connections with people, whether it's meetups or you know, online, right? Twitter, friend people on Twitter, say hi, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I should do a lot more blogging. I know the power of blogging. I want to do more blogging. I don't have the time to do blogging. But yeah, that's a way of documenting, improving, and articulating what's in your head and getting it out is by writing. And as much writing as you can possibly do, the better.
So we're all finished. Thanks everybody for coming out. And we'll have this place open for a little bit. You can hang out and talk to these guys
I think it's
or
plenty of pizza, right?
anybody else that's here. Yeah, finish up the pizza, please. Again, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, pick their brain about salary.